Well, good morning, everyone. We'll get started just a little early because everyone's here, and we're so excited to share with you the news of today. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Georgia Southwestern State University for this special occasion. Georgia Southwestern is fortunate to have more than 15,000 loyal alumni and a growing number of friends who actively support our students, our faculty, and our programs through private gifts. We're grateful to the state of Georgia for the core support that sustains all of our academic programs. However, private gifts, such as the generous gift that we will announce this morning, clearly make an extraordinary difference for our faculty and students. In the last calendar year, we have set a new record for private gifts at GSW, a total of more than $3.5 million. As our most noteworthy alumni, President and Mrs. Carter have had an immeasurable impact on this institution. During his tenure in the State Senate, President Carter changed the future of this institution with his leadership in the transformation of this campus from a two-year college to a baccalaureate degree granting institution. In 1987, Mrs. Carter placed great faith in this institution when she agreed to create the Rosalynn Carter Institute for Human Development at Georgia Southwestern. From the time I arrived at GSW, I have been committed to creating a nationally known research, technical assistance, and education center that is worthy of her name. We've made great strides at the Institute. For example, the first endowed faculty chair, endowed at $1 million at this university, was established with a generous gift from John and Betty Pope at the Rosalynn Carter Institute. A second generous gift from John and Betty Pope created the Pope Scholars and Fellows Program. And with a partnership involving Johnson & Johnson, we're extending the work of the Institute all across the country. With this generous gift from President and Mrs. Carter, we have made another giant step forward in assuring that the Rosalynn Carter Institute for Human Development will be a national center of excellence. President and Mrs. Carter, we are grateful for your leadership, and I pledge to you that the Rosalynn Carter Institute will continue to strive to be the national center of excellence in the field of caregiving. On behalf of the students and faculty of Georgia Southwestern State University, I thank you for your continuing support and your involvement in the life of this great university. It is now my great pleasure to introduce the co-chair of the Board of Directors of the Rosalynn Carter Institute for Human Development, Mr. Russell Thomas.
Thank you, President Carter, Mrs. Carter, Dr. Haynes, Dr. Talley, professors, students, alumni. This is a great day we're having out here on this cold Tuesday morning. So many of us enjoyed the party last Saturday night at the Rosalynn honoring President Carter and Mrs. Carter on the Nobel Prize. I hope you all read President Carter's response to that in this morning's America's Times Recorder. Speaking on behalf of the Board of Directors, I want to thank both President and Mrs. Carter for this generous gift. During the past 2 years, the Board of Directors of the Rosalynn Carter Institute has been involved in very serious planning and thinking about the future of the Institute. The goal that all of us have is to have a national center of excellence in the field of caregiving, as President Haynes spoke of. Under the leadership of Dr. Rhonda Talley, we are making rapid progress toward that goal. As with all endeavors, though, it takes a little cold, hard cash along with a lot of dedication and effort to make these things happen. I'm so pleased on behalf of the board this morning to represent the board and thank President and Mrs. Carter for this generous gift. We only see good things happening at the Rosalynn Carter Institute and at Georgia Southwestern State University. Thank you all for your ongoing roles as members of this outstanding organization. We pledge to work with each of you and with the administration and with President and Mrs. Carter to do what they would like to have happen at the Rosalynn Carter Institute. Thank you very much.
President, Mrs. Carter, President Haynes, Mr. Thomas, special guests, particularly Board of Directors of the Rosalynn Carter Institute. It is my pleasure to be here today representing the staff and contributors to the Rosalynn Carter Institute to accept this gift of $370,000 from President and Mrs. Carter. We cannot begin to tell you all that will mean for the life of the Institute. However, we all know what a special prize the Nobel Peace Prize is, and that very few times in a century is this distinguished award given, and to one of our own, in whom we are so very proud. And we know Mrs. Carter has walked with him along life's path the entire way, that they've shared thoughts, they've shared actions, and how generous it is of them to give this award to the Institute named in Mrs. Carter's behalf to help caregivers around the world. We work at the Institute to promote the mental health and well-being of individuals, families, and professional caregivers. And in case you don't realize that, it means all of us. At various times in our life, we'll either need care or be giving care to others. We will use this money to help alleviate suffering and promote peace, as was the wish of President Carter in his Nobel Peace Prize speech. President, Mrs. Carter, I want to commit to you our trust to be good stewards of the money that you're providing to us to further the work of the Institute. It will allow us to do things that could never be done without your generous contribution, and we are keenly aware that there are many worthy causes to whom you could have contributed these funds, and we are especially appreciative that you saw the worth of the work of the Rosalynn Carter Institute and chose to provide a portion of these very special prize monies to help us move forward and help caregivers around the world. Thank you so much for your trust in us, and I can assure you that it won't go unfounded. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce to you Nobel laureate Jimmy Carter, former First Lady and America's premier caregiving advocate, Rosalynn Carter.
Thank you very much. Well, I really enjoyed hearing from Michael and Russell and Rhonda about what will be done here at Georgia Southwestern with these funds. I thought I might tell you a little history of my relationship with Georgia Southwestern. I left Plains High School when I was still 16 years old and came over here and stayed in a dormitory. And it was my first acquaintance with higher education. There were just a few hundred students here then. Later, I went to after Georgia Southwestern, I went to Georgia Tech and Naval Academy. And it was really Georgia Southwestern College that caused me to become governor and president. And I'm going to tell you a secret this morning that not many people know about. When I was in the Senate, Georgia Senate, elected in 1962, my only request was to be involved in education, and I was the first chairman of a new Senate's Higher Education Committee. And my singular goal in life then was to have Georgia Southwestern become a four-year college. But I had a powerful adversary in Bo Calloway, who now runs Callaway Gardens and who is now my friend, but then was not, who was committed to obstructing Georgia Southwestern from becoming a four-year school, because he wanted the four-year college to go to Columbus and not to Americus. So we had a terrific confrontation. Eventually, because Governor Carl Sanders wanted a dental school in Augusta, and I had control of it with my committee, we horse traded, and Georgia Southwestern became a four-year college. But Bo Calloway and I became pretty bitter enemies. He had been a Democrat, he changed to Republican, ran for Congress, was elected, managed Goldwater's campaign in Georgia, and when I had served 2 terms in the Senate, I decided to beat Bo Calloway for Congress because of Georgia Southwestern arguments. So I ran against Bo Calloway for Congress, and late in June, there were just the 2 of us in the race. Bo Calloway decided to resign from the Congress race and run for governor, which left me with a U.S. Congress seat. I resigned from the Congress race and ran against Bo Calloway for governor. Eventually, I won't go into details, he didn't become governor, but I did. And so it was my... It was my argument at Georgia Southwestern College that caused me to be governor and president and eventually to win this prize. Well, Rosalynn is also a graduate of Georgia Southwestern. All 3 of our sons went here. My 2 cousins went here. And our roots are deep in this wonderful institution. When I was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, I was surprised but very gratified, of course. And it was because, as I said Saturday night, of the support I've always had from this community. Fortunately, when the prize was awarded on December the 10th, Republican economic policies were prevailing and the U.S. dollar was very cheap. So the Swedish krona, in which they measured the Nobel Prize, was very strong. And the prize is actually given in Swedish krona. 10 million krona, but at that time it was a lot more than 10 to 1, so we had a very generous contribution from the Nobel Prize. Some of the money has gone to the Carter Center in Atlanta, where Rosa and I are full partners, and I wanted very much to demonstrate the lifetime partnership that she and I share with my pride in what has been and is being and will be accomplished here at the Rosalynn Carter Institute. So it's with a great pleasure that I decided that the funds should come here to Rosalynn's place and to my place. I'm very proud of Georgia Southwestern.
Jimmy had decided to give me a little bit of the Nobel money, and then it was more than we thought it was going to be, so we got, the Rosalynn Carter Institute got a chunk. I'm proud of it. And I'm proud of Rosalynn Carter Institute and what it has accomplished and what is still being accomplished, and we could not have done it without Betty and John Pope. I thank them so much, Dr. Haynes and Russell and the board, and Rhonda and the staff have all been wonderful. When we started the Rosalynn Carter Institute, we actually led the way in the whole country because nobody was working on caregiving. We found one organization that celebrated a 25th anniversary not long ago, but they were working on, when they started, they were just in one they were helping care for people with brain injury and helping their caregivers. And so we were the first one, and we decided that we might work on caregiving because there were so many people who needed help. We had realized that in our community. And I called 36 organizations, I think, like the American Cancer Society, the Lung Association, anything that dealt with diseases, but also American Hospital Association, Nurses Association. So nobody was working on caregiving, and everybody said that there was a great need for it. And so we started. And it's really amazing what has happened because it was such an issue, and when people began to recognize it, every organization now has that deals with health issues has a program for caregivers, which is really wonderful. And today, here at the Rosalynn Carter Institute, you heard Dr. Haynes talking about some of the things we're doing, but he didn't tell you that we're replicating our CareNet that we developed here in every area agency on aging. Is that the way to say it? I always get confused with AAA. AOA, some of them AOA. At every district in Georgia. And we were one of the first to get a grant from the National Family Caregiver Support Program, which was started in 2001 as a part of the Older Americans Act. So we were one of the very few in the country that got that grant. And today we're in 48 states and Puerto Rico with the Johnson & Johnson Foundation, evaluating and developing a list of best practices for caregivers. And so with the background work that we've been doing here, and now evaluating programs across the country, we are really beginning to be the research institute for caregiving in the whole country. And we plan to be the best in the whole country. There's so much happening at the Rosalynn Carter Institute. I hope all of you will visit and see and talk to Rhonda and just find out what's going on because it's so exciting. And now we're starting an endowment for the program so that it will last and go on into the future. Well, the Rosalynn Carter Institute extends my work with people with mental illness. I've worked on people with mental illness for so many years, and with people with other disabilities, including our frail elderly citizens, by helping family members and friends who are taking care of them. I've worked on these issues here at the Rosalynn Carter Institute for 15 years now, and I know that caregivers are one of our nation's greatest resources, and so often they're not recognized at all, particularly in areas where the Rosalynn Carter Institute is not. We have learned that when we go to areas that don't have, so many people have no concept of the great needs of caregivers, where the Rosalynn Carter Institute is in the states and in our state, people realize. I'm really pleased that Jim and I can focus attention on the needs of caregivers by this gift to the Institute, by Jimmy's gift to the Institute. Thank you, Jimmy.
Our gift.
Thank you very much.
We hope that you will all stay for just a few minutes. We need to get some formal pictures, and then we'll be open to questions and answers if you have any for President and Mrs. Carter. So if photographers who would like to take photographs.
Yes, President and Mrs. Carter, if we could get you up here behind the podium, Dr. Talley, Dr. Haynes, Mayor Thomas on either side of the podium, that would be great.
Is it possible for Betty to come up?
You'd like to, sure. Mrs. Pope. Very good. Okay, Mayor Thomas, very good. Excellent.
Okay.
Do a couple right here. Okay, good smile.
Everybody smiling?
Nobel.
And one more here. Okay,
Okay. If the members of the media have any questions or would like to come forward, or are there any questions from the audience before we cause chaos here? Okay. Are there any questions from the audience? Well, if not, I thank you very much for taking the time to be here with us. I think the media would like to corner you separately. Members of the media, do you have questions?
Should we just yell out who we want?
Please do, yes.
Well, for Mrs. Carter, what is the money going to be used for? Do you know specifically what it will be used for? Do you have any ideas?
We just decided between ourselves.
No, we had planned for it to go for the endowment, so that we, to start an endowment, so that the Rosalynn Carter Institute would go on into perpetuity. And, but a little bit of it may be flexible, which Jimmy just said. So, but mainly for the endowment.
You talked about this being the first institute of its kind, so without this kind of support and without this money, would caregivers and the people who they serve, would they be able to get the level of care that they're getting now?
We work with caregivers to be sure that they know how to work with the ones that are receiving care, both professional and family caregivers. We have programs here at the university, and we've been fortunate to have some large gifts from the popes, particularly, and gifts and from the university. And we got a grant from Johnson & Johnson, $500,000, to start these programs across the country. We got the grant that I told you about from the Area Agency on Aging from the federal government. And so we intend for it to be a great institution and to keep raising money. And the university has started a fundraising program for the whole university, and the Rosalynn Carter Institute is part of that. And so we have great plans for the future, but we always need contributions. Thank you.
This is an issue that's very close to your heart, I understand.
Yes, and I became involved in it because of my work with mental health, which I've worked on for over 30 years now. When we came home from the White House, the university had a small endowment for a mental health program. And by the time I was able to begin work with them, I already had a good mental health program at the Carter Center. So we began originally to work with those caring for people with mental illnesses, but it quickly spread. Even before the first meeting, it spread to include all caregivers, caring for people no matter the disability. And it's just taken off. It's been great.
And again, if you can express just how important this is to be able to give this gift back to the university.
To give the funds to the university?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, it's so important to me that this continue into the future. And it's because there's such great need among caregivers. It affects all of us, as Rhonda said earlier. In fact, I had a colleague who said there are 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. And that's every one of us. And so it's such an important issue that we need to help caregivers who feel so isolated and lonely and unappreciated. We found that one of the first things we did was a survey here at the university. We had students go with family caregivers to call on professional caregivers, and then the students with the professional caregivers to call on the family caregivers. And even in our community, where we think we know everybody and are careful to be sure everybody that needs attention gets it, we found people in this community lonely and isolated and angry with with the bureaucracy, not knowing where to go for help. It was really amazing what we found. Everybody was shocked. And so that made us realize how great the need is in the whole country. if even in our small community, we had so many people who needed help. Is there another question?
I'm wondering if you might be able to discuss the Institute's growth and where it's reaching right now specifically.
Can Rhonda do that? She is so good, and she runs the Institute, and she knows what's going on, and it's so exciting.
I'm sure they're not finished your question. The Institute has been primarily focused historically in building a foundation, and that has been throughout Georgia. We started in southwest Georgia and then went to South Georgia, and now with our CareNet project, establishing community caregiver networks, we're in all area agencies on aging in Georgia except for 2, and we've made a commitment to them to help them become CareNet areas as well if they wish to do so. But the gift of part of the Nobel Monetary Prize allows us to expand our borders beyond Georgia and around the nation. We had started in that area with our partnership with Johnson & Johnson and looking at other states. For instance, New Jersey has already adopted our Caring for You, Caring for Me education and support program for caregivers. But the Nobel Monetary Award will allow us to move far beyond that. And with our research, and with our education and training and our policy and service mission to expand across the United States, building on the base that we've established here in Georgia.
We also have an office in Washington now, which has been very helpful because when we go, we had the first reception there, and everybody came from all of the government offices and people in Washington from other caregiving organizations. And so we've really put Georgia Southwestern and the Rosalynn Carter Institute on the map in the whole country now. And as Rhonda said, we have developed a program that David Hagler over here is kind of responsible for. He's worked on it so much and taken it across the country. And now we're getting requests to come. For instance, I got one from Canyon Ranch. You know what Canyon Ranch is? It's a huge spa for wealthy people in Colorado, I think. Want us to come out and work with the people who come there because so many of them are depressed and have had problems and so forth, having to deal with. So we're getting invitations from a lot of people now and actually selling this program, this course. It's actually a course in caregiving, Caring for You, Caring for Me. Have a textbook and a teacher's manual. And lots of churches are using it too. I got a group of churches together, one church, and they will use it in that church. So it's becoming known throughout the country. Really, really pleased about that.
Mrs. Carter, is this going to be your lasting legacy? You hope your greatest lasting legacy, and this could go on for years and years to come?
I don't know. I don't know what my legacy will be. I hope people think I had a lot of opportunities. I hope people think I took advantage of them and did the best I could with them. I think mental health and hopefully caregiving will be something special. Also, I'm co-chair of the Carter Center, and I work pretty hard on Carter Center programs too. So I don't know whether I'll have one legacy or not.
She runs
But it's been an interesting life, though. It's still an interesting life. A lot of excitement. Thank you. Anything else? Any question for Jimmy?
When you won the prize money, did you decide immediately that you wanted some of it to go to this institute?
I really didn't think much about the prize money when I first won the prize. But later, I tried to decide in my own mind and by myself what had helped me gain the prize. And it's obvious that the work at the Carter Center and my relationship with Rosalynn and the totality of our lives had been what attracted the attention of the Nobel Committee. So there was no doubt in my mind ever that the Rosalynn Carter Institute would receive part of the funds. And then we didn't have any idea how much it would be. You know, there was just a general thought that it might be $1 million or something. We didn't really know. And then, as I said earlier, when it came in, it was more than that. So I was able to be a little bit more generous. But this is obviously the best place I can think of for these funds to go. Thank you all for coming.